I've never seen witches until Paris.
Wow, really?
Yeah. We had rotten eggs thrown at our apartment last month, and it made it into our house.
Wow. That's like a thing?
That's the thing. 100,000 certified cults, active cults in France. There are only 2,500 pastors in France. Once a week, there's a church being burned down.
So what led you to decide to go plant a church in Paris? Why Paris? And your calling is less about a vocation and more about who you are.
Yeah.
So it has to fit in this box. You're a painter? Awesome. Make sure it's a lion, a lamb, or a dove.
I love the lion.
That's it.
It's always a lion. If you're going to copy something and do it worse, and then still get in trouble for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're an idiot.
Cool. I'm going to do a little sync. 1, 2. That really doesn't help, but I like the thought of it. It really doesn't help with the editing.
I really didn't have to clap,
But I like the thought of it. It makes me feel like I'm doing something. So, anyways, man, dude, it's so cool that you are here.
Glad to be here, sir. It's
crazy
it's
you're
the
here.
most peaceful drive.
Yeah,
here,
there's nothing to interrupt you or distract you.
There's no buildings, no concrete, no people. So
Yeah.
I think that's why I feel arrested, is because I'm not putting up with any of it.
Yeah, exactly. So your mother-in-law, she kind of lives on in Edmond, right?
In Edmond.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. So it was
Shout out to Edmond.
Shout out to Edmond. So it's like a half-hour drive kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, almost everyone here works and lives in Edmond. If you need to go to Walmart,
Oh yeah.
you basically got to go to Edmond.
We went to Costco. And Sam's Club in the same day.
Yes.
And it was the most magical day of my life. I have not seen it in over a year.
Oh right. Yeah.
I forget how cultural those places are.
Yeah.
It is the epitome of America, and I never felt more American being there. I've never been more reminded of how glorious Costco is.
Wait, so you don't have bulk Costco stuff in Paris?
We have one Costco.
You actually have a Costco? Oh.
You have to go 30 minutes outside the city. You have to rent a car because most Parisians don't own cars.
Right.
And it's a whole hoopla. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're renting a car. You're usually banding 4 of your best friends together.
Yeah.
Driving out there. And so it doesn't happen often, but when it happens,
yeah,
it's glorious. It is not American though. And a lot of ingredients are banned there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that.
So it's better. You're not getting your red 40 in. Not getting your yellow 5.
Yeah. No glycol. It's why are you eating glycol?
I don't even know what that is. RK Jr. is fuming right now.
Exactly. No fluoride.
Okay. Yeah. So okay, why don't you tell us about who you are, what you've been up to, and what you're doing now.
Yes. My name is Grant Beaudry. That's a French name.
Beaudry.
Yeah. And
my last name's French.
Really?
LeMarr.
LeMarr.
Yeah. I guess it means the sea. LeMarr.
Sure. I'm still learning French. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Born and raised in a little suburban town at the edge of the LA center there. And I don't have siblings. So was just pretty much mean drumsticks growing up most of my life.
Yeah.
My dad was a musician. He had hair down to his hips.
Nice. Wow.
And just a total byproduct of the 80s.
Yeah,
and
heck
still
yeah.
is.
Hair metal?
Day. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I'm talking Motley Crue, Skid Row, Poison, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff I was growing up with. And I was not raised in the church whatsoever. I started going to church when I was 17. And music was really just my pride and joy. My pride and joy, I should say. I did not have a normal upbringing in, I guess, around music. I actually ended up getting signed in high school and
Oh, wow, really?
started touring.
Oh, awesome.
Do you remember that band Attack Attack?
Yeah, for sure.
So they signed us.
Wait, really? Yeah.
And when I was a junior in high school, they took us on their last tour.
Wow, no way.
All around the States.
Dude,
which is
yeah,
really cool.
I was all in that emo core
Yeah.
scene scene kid kind of vibe back in the day.
Vans Warped Tour was just like Christmas for me every year.
Dude, that's sick. That's crazy.
So I played drums and produced, and the record we produced in my bedroom caught their attention, and they ended up taking us on the road for their last tour in 2013.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which was cool. And that just was all I really ever wanted to do. I never wanted to go to college or do the traditional 9-to-5 thing. And so I had this really high. And then around that time, my father actually was in a 2-year relationship with someone else. And so that was kind of the split of my family. But it's crazy because we actually have a beautiful relationship now. During that time, my best friend, his parents were like my parents. I don't know if you had a best friend and like you're always at each other's houses and their parents were like yours and vice versa.
Yeah, sure.
So they knew what was happening. And my dad battled alcohol for a long time. And so that was attributed to a lot of that. And I was invited to go to church for the first time when I was like 17.
And you're still in LA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'd never been to a Christian church before.
Wow.
And it was insane. It was more of like a seeker style church. So the worship team was like all production heavy. And then the pastor came out and they were going through a family series on how to navigate toxic relationships within your family. And I felt like the pastor was, talking directly to our situation and stuff. So that's how I got started going to church and just kept showing up and probably drank too much Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well,
so in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all did with the seeker sensitive movement there for a while. We all drank the Kool-Aid a little too much. Yeah. The reason I really wanted to talk to you is because like you are someone that's, you're kind of cut from the same cloth as me in certain areas. Yeah. Like I've only known you for a couple months now. I haven't known you super long. And even our interactions are basically just a couple Instagram stuff here and there. So I don't super really know you, but our circles are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Like are you a seminary student?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Are you the bachelor's?
Yes.
The bachelor's? Okay. Yeah, cool. So like we're going to the same school. So like I can probably, cause THEOLOGY is pretty unique. Shout out THEOLOGY.
Hey.
I can probably guess like some of your certain ideas and, leanings when it comes to like church stuff. So like, what was it that kind of led you to now plant a church in Paris of all places? Yeah. It's like, that's like playing a video game on the most hard difficulty there is. Yeah. I mean, Paris is insane.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I would not prescribe it to anyone who is not called to church plant because it is the hardest thing. I
mean, planting a church anywhere is crazy, let alone Paris.
Yeah. I've never seen witches until Paris.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Wow. We had rotten eggs thrown at our apartment last month, and it like made it into our house. It was wild.
Wow. That's like a thing?
That's the thing.
Wow.
Yeah. We have a buddy, I won't name him, but he actually started the Paris House of Prayer, and he's actually spent a lot of time in Africa and stuff. And so a lot of the weird things that we navigate spiritually, I've never been one to like overemphasize spiritual warfare, or really lead with that as like part of my essence, I guess. But it is weird though. It is weird. There are things that we are navigating, and it's not for the faint of heart. But that also shows how powerful God is. You know what I mean? Like, anytime you're entering a dark territory or post-church territory, you're just here. So here's a crazy fact. There is 100,000 certified cults, active cults in France.
Wow.
There are only 2,500 pastors in France.
Whoa, the whole nation?
Yeah. And once a week, there's a church being burnt down. In replacement, as they're building them back up, they're becoming mosques. What? So that's the lay of the land that we're working with. And we had no idea to that extent, but it is crazy.
Yeah, because France is pretty Muslim heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember even hearing statistics from like 10 years ago that just how it was super, super on the rise. And even when I was in London, in England, you were there in June. Just like I was amazed at how much it was there, how prevalent it was there. So, what led you to decide to go plant a church in Paris? Why Paris?
Yeah, it wasn't a part of our vision. We actually had vision to plant in LA. We were part of a church called C3 LA.
Oh yeah.
For the past 2 years.
Yes.
And
Jake Sweetman.
Yeah,
sweet.
And his wife Nicole.
Yeah.
And we were actually in a discipleship group with the vision for actually planting in LA. And actually, this time last year, October 2023. As a church, we were going through just some formational practices. We have a men's ministry back there called Sons, and it's just spiritual formation for the men in the church. And there was a cool exercise that was introduced. You'll find this cool, and you probably know about it. But the prayer exercise is silent prayer.
Yeah.
And so what we were doing was 30 minutes of reading and 30 minutes of prayer each day leading up to Easter.
Yeah, I love that.
And then we did it one other time. And it's just cultivating this practice of, okay, during my 30 minutes of prayer time, 15 minutes of that, I'm just going to set a timer and just ask the Lord, like, what do you want to say to me today?
Yeah.
I know you speak.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to seek your face. And man, if you want to say anything, I'm here.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't prescribe that to someone who's like brand new to faith, because discerning God's voice is huge.
Yeah.
In this, but yeah, I mean, it's about a year of doing this practice, and I've had a few interesting things happen around that have come to fruition, and it really sharpens a lot of prophetic limbs, I would say. But yeah, I was honestly just in our Pasadena apartment, and my wife Courtney was on a flight to Japan with her aunt and her grandma for a few days.
Cool.
And I'm at home and I'm just like, Kumbaya. Lord, what do you want to say? You know? And I don't know, like take it or leave it, but I felt like the Lord was just speaking to me in bullet points.
Yeah.
And I always do it with a journal. And I just wrote down a few things in my heart I was feeling prompted with. And the first thing was, you guys are to move to Paris. That timeline is winter, spring 24. You are to sell and give away things here in California, one of which is your car. And I was like, that's definitely Lord.
Yeah.
I worked so hard for my car leading up to that point, and I only owned it for like 2 years up until that point. And I had vision for this car being like our early family car.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the grieving of California is going to be hard, but it's not impossible. I have you in the palm of my hands. And then I got an image of a gallery. And this gallery was in Paris. And 2 words came up in this image of a gallery space: teaching and discipleship. So I was like, huh. So I started sketching it out. And I'm like, man, this is wild. This is really incredible. Using an art gallery in Paris to operate church in.
Yeah.
And I'm an artist. You know, I'm not only a musician, but I've spent the past 10 years of my life dedicated to graphic design and art direction and branding. And
yeah, I know. I've seen some of your stuff. It's incredible.
All that stuff. Thank you. And I've got to do a lot of cool things with that. So as an artist myself, my wife working in fashion for the past 13 years between New York and London, we are just creatives, and we know what it's like to not necessarily feel safe or invited or welcomed into a church who's a little bit more traditional.
Right.
So for us, after being discipled, we were part of another church called Mosaic. I was there for 7 years.
Erwin
McManus. So I was there for 7 years serving on worship, playing drums, and the creative team. I also I did 1 year Bible college there as well. Erwin had this class called Untitled, and it was like just whatever he wanted to talk about. Yeah. It was amazing.
That's a great name, Untitled.
Yeah. And so we've been trained up. We've done a lot of life in LA over the past 10 years, and we just felt this huge invitation to go. So this is a crazy story. I have this gnarly prayer morning. There's a few other things on this list, and I'm freaking out because I've never heard from the Lord like this so directly. Yeah. And obviously I want to test it because this is a huge, call, and we're in our first year of marriage as well. So just want to be careful.
Wow. Yeah.
So I text her and I'm like, hey babe, I just had a gnarly prayer morning, but before I say anything, can I invite you to just pray on your flight at some point and we can connect later? And so she's like, yeah, okay. Is there like any area you want me to pray
direction?
about?
Like,
yeah. And I was like, no. I was like, whatever spontaneously comes to mind, if anything.
Yeah.
So we connect probably 6, 7, 8 hours later that day. And we're on the phone on WhatsApp. And I insisted that she shared first because I asked her, I'm like, did you receive anything? Or she's like, uh-huh. So I'm like, spit it out. What is it? And she reads to me what she wrote down in her journal. We're to move to Paris, winter, spring 24.
Wow.
I got an image of a gallery space that we were doing discipleship in.
Wow.
And so there's a few other things too. And I just started like laughing and tearing up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is crazy. What? We've never talked about living in Paris ever. So that was a hard trip for her for the next 5 days as she's in Japan, and she's like in the back of her mind thinking, gosh, we have a move that's coming up. And
so when was this?
This was last year.
Wow. Okay.
October last year.
So literally 12 months basically.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So we take it back to our pastors. And obviously it's a huge pivot. And they're like, all right, cool. Well, let's pray about this for the next 4 weeks and we'll see if anything comes up. But don't make any like huge sudden movements. Let's test it. Let's see what time does. And during the next 4 weeks, everything that I wrote down, plus a couple other points that I didn't mention, actually came to fruition. And by the end of those 4 weeks, we knew it wasn't just coming from the posture of asking for permission. It was more like, hey, if we don't do this, now that everything that we wrote down has happened, this would be a sign of disobedience.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to break up with the idea of something when it feels too soon. For me, I felt like that transition in my humanity and my flesh was too soon. We'd been there for 2 years, but I had vision for longer. And sometimes the Lord just interrupts that. And that's usually an invitation for maturity in a different way.
Right.
So we packed up all our stuff and we got our visas within 1 week, which does not happen.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
The Lord blessed us with an influx that month, which was one of the points. I felt like the Lord gave me a number, but I was really hesitant because of prosperity. So I tested it, and actually that month we received a huge influx by the date that I felt the Lord was saying. And that was the means for us to move all of our stuff, pack our things up in 2 months, and be in France by February 1st, 2024.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And we got out there. We only knew 2 people. We knew one couple from a C3 church in Paris. And that kind of opened up our world to a super vibrant community. We made friends like that, which is not normal. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of the transition story.
That's such a quick turnaround for such a life-altering, transition like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Like that is, the amount of pressure that must have been like so intense. Yeah. And I guess like the thing with that is like when you know it's God, it's kind of like getting married. When you know, yeah, kind of thing. Like was that kind of like how it felt?
You're never fully ready.
Yeah, exactly.
And to this day, I'm like, we're not fully ready. Like in my flesh, I'm like, dude, I still have so long to go. But God doesn't call you when you feel ready, because truth is you never will feel ready.
Yeah.
But if you have peace, or if you have direction, and because it's been confirmed multiple ways, then it's not a question of how comfortable you are. It's just like, dude, it's really simple. You're going to be obedient or you're not, and God will use someone else, you know, if you don't.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I think like when you give God your yes and you're like, God, use me, God will do that. And don't be surprised when he shakes up your context, you know?
Right.
But then courage has to be the ingredient that you utilize to like press that thing forward. Cause without it, yeah. So we've had to grow in really interesting ways. Even this past year, we've been there for almost a year now. And we are not the same people who we were when we left the States. God has postured so many things for us to tangibly confront. And honestly, David, sometimes I think like our move to France isn't just about the sparkly vision of church planning, which it's not, you know, but I really do think like I think God is more interested in who we're becoming than where we're going or what we're doing.
Yeah.
And as a son and my wife as a daughter, I think he's more interested in our character development and our yes actually having weight behind it. So just even from a character standpoint, dude, and this could be encouraging for anyone listening too. Like, man, you may have come to faith 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 40 years ago. And, but who am I to think that God's done working on my character?
Yeah.
You know, so often we look at the line of salvation, if you believe in that, as something you cross and then you coast.
Right.
You know, so
no,
we're being refined and chiseled, and it's obviously good, but it's really painful too.
I so feel that. You know, I feel like callings get really muddy. The idea of callings get really muddy, especially in how it's presented for most American churches. Like, I know this is how I was raised, and I'm not trying to knock it, but how I was raised in like charismatic movements. My dad was never like this, but like I remember going to youth camps, and my dad was always supportive of whatever I wanted to do, really. Unless my hair got too long, and then he got mad at me and yelled at me, and I had to cut my hair. But aside from that, Dad was always supportive. But like, there was always this idea. Like, I went to Christ for the Nations in Dallas, and they would do altar calls for like people who feel called into the ministry, and it's like a Bible college, so that like makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But even like at youth camps, it's like, you know, come to the front if you feel called to the ministry, and I love that. I think that's awesome. The problem that I think comes from that people may not realize is like, it almost separates secular jobs, secular callings from like ministry work.
Yeah, really good.
And so like I have found even in relationships and friends and people that have struggled with this, it's like there's this unhealthy comparison of like, oh, you're a pastor, oh, you work for a church, oh, you know, like there's somehow a higher calling on my life because I'm vocationally a minister versus someone like my wife who, you know, works and helps at a hospital and, you know, is an HR manager for a hospital, whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like there is a difference in terms of like teachers are going to be judged with more strictness. Like that's clear. We see that in scripture. But at the same time, it's like we all have a part to play in the kingdom, and your calling is less about a vocation and more about who you are.
Yeah.
Like if I lost my voice and now I can't preach, is like my calling somehow now diminished or less than?
Yeah.
Like, no, of course not. Like my value, I'm a guitar player. So like if I were to lose my hands, or you're a drummer, if you were to lose your hands, well, now you can't do that anymore. And so, or I guess you could be the guy that plays with his feet or whatever. But like, no one wants to see that. But like, but like, is now somehow your self-worth or your value to the kingdom, it's gone. You lost your calling. It's over. Like, no, I really don't think calling has anything to do with a vocation or even like success in that way. I think it's all about who you are. Yeah. And this is where I kind of came to, because a few years ago, I was kind of in like the, I don't know, hype church kind of vibe, and like was, you know, thinking of those circles and those people. And I just kind of came to a realization. It's like, it would be far better for me to move to a small town in the middle of nowhere, where you are now, raise godly kids, have a godly marriage, help my dad, be a blessing to my family, and just serve the people that are in front of me and just try to build something amazing that's in front of me and live a quiet, as Timothy says, like, or Paul says to Timothy, like, just live a small, quiet life and work with your hands. Maybe it's Thessalonians he says that. But it's like that idea, I think, gets really lost and we build up our callings. Like, I'm not successful unless I lead thousands to Christ or have 4 million on TikTok or like whatever, X amount of dollars or X amount of, and I really don't think I don't think that's what Paul refers to when he talks about living a life worthy of your call. I don't think that's what calling is at all.
Yeah. It's a temptation. And I think because in many ways I didn't grow up in the church, I know what you're saying. My first impressions of even pastors, I never wanted to be one, but some days I don't.
Same.
People are hard. Yeah. I love them though. But yeah, I mean, my first impressions are, you got the New York City churches and, you got the Australia churches and, the land down under. It's like, it's ridiculous. I always have to say Mac, Shaq.
Yeah. Good morning, chat.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so it could be tricky even for the Christian space. I kind of feel bad in some ways for the kids who grew up when I started going to church, and that was the template in many ways, was all the lights and production and stuff. It wasn't really based on, man, how much value can I, give you right now?
Well, I think it's also warped what discipleship is.
Yeah,
because discipleship is not attendance. It's not coming to a production.
Yeah.
It's not watching a band play 3 songs and then hear a pastor give a TED Talk.
Yeah.
That is not formation.
Mm-hmm.
Formation has to happen in relationship. I think Jeannie Mayo said the Holy Spirit does 90% of his work on the road of friendship, on the road of relationship.
I like that.
And even we see like there is spiritual hierarchy. Like you need a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs someone in their life that can tell them, no, you're being a jerk right now.
Yeah.
Like, stop it.
Yeah.
But like, what is that context for you? I mean, because I know my wife who was 3.5 years in Paris. What was that context? What is that context for you now, being in a place like Paris where like an American church model is probably not really going to fly very well?
No, yeah, it's rare. Over the past year, we've made sure to do our homework on getting a lay for the land, and there are only under 5, I would say, evangelical Christian churches in our expression that exist in all of like Paris. I could be a little wrong, I don't know, but based off our homework for this past year, making sure we're visiting different places, meeting different pastors, and just meeting communities and stuff, like that's been our experience. And it's kind of wildly confirming too why God would send us there, because there's such a need. I think a lot of people look to nations like Africa as, a prime opportunity to bring the gospel there. But I sometimes feel bad that some of the post-church territories can get looked over a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why there's something stirring in Europe right now. And I think a lot of people are sensing that. We're having a lot of conversations with different pastors' organizations and, friends from different circles, and they're just like, yeah, there's something happening there.
Yeah.
And so we're excited for that. But yeah, I mean, discipleship as an overarching theme, I've been a part of churches where discipleship wasn't, it wasn't really like a part of the DNA of the church. It was more so caught by serving.
Right.
Which is a lot of churches' mentalities. And then the church that we spent the last 2 years at was more discipleship focused and teaching focused. And, but then it wasn't like as predominant with the creativity stuff or some of the more attraction based things.
Yeah.
And I think both have their places. I think this day and age, it's hard to make and multiply disciples without having a welcoming environment.
For sure.
And I'm not saying like, hey, you got to get a giraffe on your parking lot for people to come. I've literally been a part of a church who did that.
An actual giraffe?
An actual giraffe. His name was Jeffrey the Giraffe. And it was amazing.
That actually sounds awesome.
Yeah. But so I just see the need for both. But at the end of the day, why does the church exist, right?
Yeah.
And what are we doing here? Are we a movie theater, or are we trying to reshape the malformation that we're walking in with because culture has severely malformed us?
Yeah.
And so, just why does the church exist is something that is driving the narrative of how we're doing this. So even our concept is really fun. In Paris, God gave us this vision, the church plant in a gallery space, which I've never heard of. Mm-hmm. And don't steal our concept, but church planting in a gallery space is really sweet for those who maybe don't feel necessarily safe. Again, France is a different culture than America. Yeah. More people have crossed arms than they do open arms when it comes to church. So we're just wildly aware of how hard it is to target people who are in creative industries. Our church is for everyone, but us as artists, we know the power of displaying God's beauty in an authentic and original way that's not templated by American Western church. And so what we want to do is incredible, just like immersive things. But at the end of the day, we're a church. So what we're doing is we're spiritually forming people, and we're teaching people the scriptures. So what we are doing once we have our buildings locked in is doing the normal Sunday gathering. And then once a month, we're going to be covering hot topics on like Wednesday nights.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean? Just culturally relevant hot topics that are just taboo. And then we also just want to tangibly pray for the city on Wednesday mornings, like once a month, and then actually be of service by mobilizing our teams to go out and serve homeless with food and actually be of service to those who are struggling.
Yeah.
There.
I love that.
So you're not just coming in, like, ooh, but, we want to be actively participating in the lives of those who are there, be a light in a dark place. And then we're also operating it as a coffee shop throughout the week, which is really cool. Awesome. So being a part of a gallery gives us a lot of, leeway to, serve the community in different ways by becoming regulars and, getting your pour over coffee and all that. And,
I love that. That's pretty much what my wife and the YWAM base, that's kind of what they did, is they ran it as a restaurant throughout the week. So you're building that relationship.
Yeah. And then you could do like pop-ups too, which is always fun. So that it just gives us a lot of opportunity to connect with the community in a way that isn't so templated or feels weird because there's like a weird program behind it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, dude,
gotcha.
I want to connect with the like skaters there. Like I grew up skateboarding my whole life, and like,
me too.
I want to connect with those guys. You know what I mean? And so cool. Court, she works in fashion. We're in fashion capital. So
yeah.
So I think it's just a cool opportunity to do fun things.
What's the best trick you've ever landed?
Ooh. Okay, it was a tray flip, but it never kick flipped it. It always did like a Healy flip.
So what? Like a laser flip?
Is that my verbiage is?
So like, okay, so this
years.
is the skateboard.
Yeah.
You're going like, okay, so normal tray flip, you're going to go like this.
Yes. So we would do the 360 flip, but it was.
But you're going this way?
No, it's still going
this way.
It's still going the tray flip.
But then it heel flips.
But the flip is reversed.
Is heel?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I've only landed them a few times.
I think you just invented a trick.
I don't know.
Laser
it was a miracle.
Flip is a heel flip like that, where it goes like that way.
Opposite spin.
My favorite, what I was kind of good at that no one else could really get done was front side or hard flips.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I'm trying to get a board. The prices have gone up on those things.
I have one. I bought it like 10 years ago. I've touched it maybe like a few times. Or maybe it was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. The landscape has completely changed.
Yeah,
it's like $300-400 to complete a deck.
Oh yeah,
in Paris now, and I'm like,
oh, I bet.
Gosh, dang, dude.
Yeah,
this thing's gonna snap.
You know, no, eventually. Even here it's so expensive now.
Yeah,
I could care less to do it now because pain.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We actually have a skate park here. When I was a kid, because there's a lot of like skater kids here. Like when I was a teenager, and like my buddy, and my dad, I think helped too. Like we raised funds and like we did it, and It's not finished. It's only like halfway done, and that was like 20 years ago. Yeah. But
it's a quarter pipe, okay?
But it's there.
The rail's in progress.
It's there. Oh yeah, man! I used to love skating.
I missed it, dude. Did you play like skate or like Tony Hawk?
Oh heck yeah, dude! Oh, all of those. Yeah. Underground 2. Yep. Underground 2 was amazing. There's another newer one that I remember played like till it broke, but. Anyways, okay. So I love your whole like idea and this concept of the church in the art gallery. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a creative, whatever. I love this thought of the church reclaiming art specifically and like creative things specifically. Yeah. You know, I did not want to be a pastor when I actually started going to school. I went to CFNI and I finished that. It's not like a fully accredited program thing anyways. So when I started to actually like work on my bachelor's, I was going to be an architect. Nice. My grandfather's a civil engineer, super genius. And I thought that could be like different enough. You know, I didn't want to be a pastor, but like still kind of like a LeMarr kind of thing to do, you know, but because I remember reading and just this thought of like architecture is the language of the culture. You know, it kind of shows the values of the culture. And I agree with this. I forgot where I read this. This has been like 10, 12 years ago at this point. But like you look at, I mean, even just where we were in England and just, you know, the Norwich Cathedral, 900 years old, you know, it took them 70 some odd years to build. I mean, immaculate. I'm sure you went in. I'm sure you went when you were there. Incredible. I went to St. Paul's Cathedral in London. I mean, absolutely beautiful. Amazing. And then everything here is a gray box. And it's really like kind of shows, but it wasn't always like that. And just like everything here is so cheap and so expedient. Yep. And even so where we are in Oklahoma, like we're right next to the old capital, Guthrie, little Oklahoma knowledge for you. Guthrie used to be the state capital. And so there's some really old buildings there. And like even those, they're like incredible and they're beautiful on the inside, and you just see this detail and this work that was put into it. Yeah. And then it's like now everything just seems so quick and efficient. Yeah. And like my concern is like even we see that same culture happen in our churches. Like we think conversions are like instantaneous. You know, it's this gray box that we just kind of put real quick. You know, lots of hands raised and stuff, but like how many of those from like my friends in my youth have now deconstructed their faith into oblivion? And it just, so my thought was always like kind of bridging this kind of like spiritual and like creative aspect, and being an architect, I always thought was like a cool way to do that. Because I do feel like the church has been playing the back foot when it comes to like the creative spaces. And I think that's something that's like wrong.
Well, it's terrible. If you're going to copy something and do it worse and then still get in trouble for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're an idiot.
Exactly.
You're not a Christian. You're an idiot.
Yeah, no, totally.
You know?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I'm a drummer and I am tired of the same Bethel snare drum sample on every single
Hey, but they sound good though.
Song. They sound so good. And you know what the worst part is? If I was producing it, I'd probably be using it.
Yeah.
Or not, but but yes, everything's instant gratification. I grew up in my church years with everything being templated. Yeah. And in many ways it is. And I understand, like, yes, there's boundaries to genres. There's just certain tools you're going to use to get the job done. I get it. Or association and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of creativity can, or quote unquote creativity can be more based in the fear of man and acceptance.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Than it is of being an offering to God. Yeah. And I'm not saying like get a sitar out and playing some weird
Can you imagine? Welcome to church.
Yeah, you know, I'm not an extremist in that sense, and I don't.
Yeah, they are handling snakes at that church for sure.
You're not saved, okay? But I don't know. I don't know why so many Christians are so afraid to do something different.
Yeah.
And they almost need permission to step out. And I don't know, maybe that's a byproduct of just us coming from a church like Mosaic, you know what I mean? For so many years where Irwin was known for, originality and kind of being edgy with that.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I liked going to Mosaic during my time there, was because I was like, oh, Irwin gets it,
Yeah.
He's not afraid to say what everyone's thinking.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think sometimes the greatest honor I think I would ever have in terms of church planning or whatever that means is when people say like, man, you've given me permission to be authentically myself.
Yeah.
And that's been pinned up to the character of God. And I feel fully alive,
Yeah.
I feel most like myself because you guys have given us permission to be authentically 100% unapologetically ourselves.
Yes.
And I wish more people would disciple people into that, and inform them that, you're not a mistake. Your creativity does not have to sound like your neighbor's creativity.
Yeah.
Or look like your neighbor's graphics. You know what I mean? And I'm speaking as a designer. I've had my work ripped off left and right, dude. And it's so sad because they come from Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
Yeah. So my dad is not creative really at all. And he doesn't care if me saying, he's very analytical. Yeah. His dad was an engineer, right? He was going to be a geologist. So total nerd. Going to go study rocks, but he's brilliant. His mind is brilliant. My dad has books of the Bible memorized. I mean, Great. Incredible theologian, incredible mind. Yeah. I hope I can have as sharp as a brain as my dad one day. But he is not creative. Could care less about any type of creative expression. Mm-hmm. So I think like some of the stuff we see in church, it's not like, I don't think it's all necessarily like the pastor's fault. Because if they're built like Mark LeMarr, like my dad, like he's not going to think like that. Mm-hmm. I think part of the problem comes down to, honestly, some of this kind of older Pentecostal, charismatic, Puritan mindsets of like creativity or things that look like quote unquote worldly expressions are wrong. So it has to fit in this box. You're a painter, awesome. Make sure it's a lion, a lamb, or a dove.
I love the lion.
That's it.
It's always a lion.
It's always
Why is it always a lion?
And that's awesome. I love lion paintings, Like we have one hanging up in our lobby of a church. It's beautiful. Shout out to Latimer. I love it. Yeah. But like there's more than that.
Yes.
If you're going to write music, make sure it's specifically for corporate worship only.
Do you ever think of like, man, how wild would it be if Bon Iver was saved?
Dude, yeah.
How incredible.
Yeah.
That would be where like McGee was saved.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've dreamed about John Mayer getting saved.
Gosh.
I'm a super John Mayer fan.
Yeah. But favorite John Mayer record?
Well...
Hard one.
Okay, if I had to choose one record to listen to only, it would be his 2008 live one. That was after Continuum. One record standalone by itself, Continuum. One record for sentimental personal reasons, probably Born and Raised.
Okay. Yep.
Even though that's probably not my favorite record or his best record, I just have a lot of memories tied to Born and Raised.
There's nostalgia attached to it. Yeah.
But overall, his 2008 live album, I don't know what it's called. Where the Light Is. Where the Light Is.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Man. What are your bones to pick? What are some things that you're like coming to mind as we're talking about this?
Honestly, what I was just saying with some of the limitations that I think Christians can put on themselves out of fear. I mean, I remember even so I was really involved in music. Like I remember my senior year of high school, I wrote 180 songs. They're all terrible. No one will ever hear them. They're garbage. But I was just like so invested in that, and I really thought that was something I was going to do. I went to Sif and I played on a couple of their albums, and really thought for a moment there I might try and actually pursue being like a studio guitarist or certain things like that. I played for a couple local churches and recorded some of their music, whatever, but or guitar for them, guitar for hire kind of thing. Thought I would do some of that kind of stuff, but I remember even like as a teenager, like there was a fear even with my parents of kind of like, well, you just need to make sure, you're not getting involved in the wrong circles. Or like I remember I played a show, I was 14, maybe I was 15. I played a show in Bricktown.
Yeah.
what was the name of that place? I don't even remember. It was so long ago. It was so bad. I did so terrible. But
what tuning were you playing in when you were 14? If you were in drop C, you were a sinner.
I had some songs in drop C. I remember, yeah. Devil Wears Prada, and I remember like listening to them and being whatever, who cares?
So good.
But I remember like the show was in a bar, and I didn't really know that. I was 15, and I had like stuff on my MySpace page.
Yeah. Shout out to Tom.
Shout out to Tom. And so like, like just those kind of like show hustlers or whatever, battle for the band stuff. Mm-hmm. Like they just message you, not because you're good, but just because like they'll get money from you,
Did you have to like, you basically had to sell tickets to play the show?
No, exactly.
Basically, you pay to play.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. That's all it was.
Why was that a thing?
Because they're just preying on hopeful teenagers.
It was always like parents and aunts and uncles that were like, "What is going on?"
So I got like the whole church to come, pretty much as the pastor's kid.
Yeah.
And I remember like being in there and like I didn't really think of any of this, but hearing it from my dad later on, like people in the church were like, "There's a lot of spider webs here." And because it was in a bar, which as a 15-year-old playing a show in a bar, I get it. I'm not advocating that you take your 15-year-old to a bar so he can play music there, But it wasn't set up for that. It was set up for a battle. So there was a lot of kids there my age. Like it was most of the bands were kids my age, 15, 16-year-olds kind of set up. But there's almost like this sometimes fear, and that's maybe not a fair comparison, but like sometimes there's this fear of like, we don't want to let you get too creative because one, it might be a distraction that you're taking away from God's glory, or two, it's going to lead you to a worldly path. Like
and you're going to dye your hair blue and drive a Prius every day.
A Prius is crazy. Like I remember when we were recording one of the albums at CFNI, Gabriel Allred, who was the worship leader. I love Gabe. And, he went on a big rant about a lot of these ideas are formed from Gabe, because he went on this big rant of like, why are we not allowed to be creative almost? It's like, at what point is this brushstroke? Okay, now it's too creative, and now you've taken away from God's glory, because now it's a distraction. Yeah. And there's something to be said about corporate worship, about it being corporate.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah.
But another time we were recording. I was with the old bass player for Cutlass. You remember Cutlass?
Oh, yeah.
What was his name? Dave something. Oh, man, he was such a cool guy. And we had this little Rhodes set up. And there was this song that we were recording. And the guy who wrote it, it was these weird chord progression. I don't remember. It was like super trippy. Loved it. Very Radiohead, right? And so me and Dave, we were sitting at this Rhodes. And we kind of came up with this part. And I remember, like, the producer guy, I don't know who it was, some guy who came in from Nashville, I don't remember his name. He was like, you know what, like, guys, that's not going to work. That's going to be too distracting. And he, like, went on this thing of, like, soccer moms aren't going to care to listen to that. And I just remember feeling, like, so defeated. I was like...
It's such a degrading comment, too.
But, like, they're going to listen to, like... I'm sure they listen to, like, Guns N' Roses or, like, Radiohead or, like, John Mayer or, like... I mean, this isn't any more complicated and I don't know, maybe it was just a bad idea. Maybe it was just a bad song. Sure. I don't know. Sure. But it's like, this is not going to be any more quote unquote creative than those. Yeah. Why are we purposefully like limiting? And that's how I felt a lot of the times.
And why is this guy the ceiling of creativity?
Right.
Who are you?
I don't know. And so I feel like the three things, I feel like my calling in life is three things: creativity, purpose, and hope. I feel like to think outside the box in areas, purpose, helping people find themselves and find purpose, to live out their call, not a vocation, but like who they really are. Because I think even if I was no longer a pastor and had to be a plumber, I still would try my best to be the most creative, purpose-filled, hope-filled plumber there is. However I need to provide for my family, I'll do what it takes. But your calling is a level above your vocation, like we were already saying. But it's just like, I want to see people walk in their call and their purpose and their themselves creative expression, like whatever that ends up looking like.
Yeah, it's a beautiful heart, dude. Like that.
So, bro. Well, how can we be praying for you?
Gosh, I think just protection overall. like I mentioned, it's not for the faint of heart, you know. So our favorite prayer is, Lord, would you just send people into our lives that we're going to need for this season, and would you send us into the lives of those that could benefit from our service as well. And honestly, just that the Lord's will would just be done in Paris. You know what I mean? I'm really excited for what's already been brewing there. I'll pop into the house of prayer over there and play drums like once a month.
Oh, cool.
I've made some of the most closest friendships I've ever had over there in this past year already. And you can tell that something special is really brewing there, that God wants to do something really special in and throughout, not just Paris, but like Europe overall.
Yeah.
And just prayer for the overall health of the church. We're gearing up. We have an ambitious goal of securing our property by February and a few months from now.
Wow.
So we're in the fundraising stages of that. Right now we're raising $1 million.
Wow.
And that's going to help us open our doors, secure our property, open our coffee shop, and pay some staff members as well. So yeah, that incredible. Whatever comes to mind when you hear that we just really appreciate that. We believe prayer changes outcomes. So
yeah.
And if anyone's ever in Paris, you know, don't be a stranger.
Heck yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And follow his podcast, right? Forward this, please.
Yeah, please forward this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
On pretty much everywhere.
Thanks.
It's just my wife and I talking mainly just about church, creativity, and beauty, and just things that, you know, light our hearts on fire. It's been really cool to start that with Court. She's a brilliant leader. I love her a lot. She's not gentle like how a lot of people are in the church. She's very direct and fierce. Mm-hmm. And I love that I married someone who's not a girl. She's a woman.
Yeah, dude.
And she's my pride.
That's awesome.
Joy. I love her so much.
I love that.
She's the best.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you, dude? How can we be praying for y'all?
Dude, just continuing with the transition here with getting things. You know, it's been 2 years. Yeah. A lot's happened in those 2 years. Yeah. And I really feel like now we're kind of hitting a real sweet spot. And so just continuing to grow in that. And then, really just our family. Mm-hmm. Paula and I are doing wonderful. We're wanting to have more kids, hopefully sooner rather than later. Paula's going to be so mad I said that.
Hey-o.
But hopefully more kids sooner rather than later. And so just, you know, building our home and just all things family like that, you know, which is so awesome. Such a sweet spot in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most important thing, dude.
Yeah.
You're a good man. I appreciate you.
Dude, thank you. Thank you for being here.
All right.
Hey, if you enjoyed this, would you consider liking and subscribing? Follow us. If you didn't like it, why don't you go ahead and just let us know why in the comments section. It's always a lovely place. Hey, I want to also let you know throughout the month of December, I'm going to be writing every day on my Substack talking about the things that the devil hates. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about Ephesians 4, 5, and 6, and the 31 different commands that Paul lays out. I'm going to take a command a day. And so it's going to be really encouraging. I'm really looking forward to doing it. Also just kind of practice some more writing on my end. And so you can follow along for that. Links in the description. Hey, God bless.